It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you again. You'll be happy to know that NIAC is on the Plowshares Fund docket again this year, and unless something terrible happens today, I think we can look forward to an 11th year of support for NIAC, and it's our pleasure to help you do what you do so well. This has been a remarkable few years. You and I and our comrades in this struggle to stop Iran's bomb and to stop a new war have had a tough fight. And we just marked, back in July 14th, the one-year anniversary of the deal finally being negotiated, with the diplomats staying past the deadline to hammer out the final agreements. I have a bottle of champagne in my office marked July 14th, signed by all the staff members on our team who were there at the day. We accomplished something remarkable. And yet, today it doesn't really feel that joyous. It doesn't feel as good as it felt a year ago, or a year ago September, when we cleared the last congressional hurdle and efforts to kill this deal were finally blocked in the Senate and in the House. There's a sense of incompleteness, of promise unfulfilled. Now, this is a deal unlike any other. This is, without a doubt, the best nuclear policy accord in a generation or more. You have to go back to Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan at the beginning of the 1990s to find an agreement that accomplished so much, so peacefully, at so little cost. But we have to be honest, we expected more. We wanted an agreement that didn't just block all of Iran's pathways to a bomb, that didn't just stop a fourth unnecessary war in the Middle East. We thought this was going to be an opening, that this was going to be the beginning of a new era of relations between the United States and Iran, that this was going to be the beginning where President Rouhani could start to implement some of the human rights reforms that he has long promised, where he could put into place some of the economic reforms that he promised. We thought that we were going to see an era where the U.S. and Iran would start to cooperate on the serious, strategic, regional issues we face. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen any of that. In fact, in some ways, it's worse. The situation of Iranian Americans visiting Iran is worse now than it was before the agreement. The opponents of the deal are arresting Iranian Americans, using them as pawns in their struggle. The visa issue is worse now. It is difficult for you to get members of your family to come here and visit. But that's not the whole story. That's just within the deal. There's this greater unease we feel, this greater uncertainty, and it's got the whole country on edge, and it's about this election. It's about what's at stake in this election. How long does it take you when you come to a meeting, when you go to a party, to start talking about the election? How addicted are you to 538? How often do you keep checking? Really? Is he really that close? Can this actually happen? This dread is starting to permeate our country, and it permeates every aspect of our lives. And so we have to recognize this. We have to deal with this. We can't just pat ourselves on the back, although I'm a big fan of patting myself on the back. We have to understand the real challenges that we're up against, the real fears that we have. And as we do that, we do have to just take a moment and say, look, okay, things are bad, but you know what? It could have been a lot worse. What if a year ago we had lost? What if we didn't have this agreement? What if Tom Cotton had succeeded in killing it? Or Marco Rubio had succeeded in killing it? Or people had listened to the politicians on the stump who promised they would rip the deal up? What if we had backed away? What if we didn't have this deal? Right now, we would have Iran racing towards a bomb. We would have a complete collapse of diplomatic relations, not just between the United States and Iran, but among the U.S. and its partners there. There's a very good chance that all the conflicts in the region would be even more inflamed as everyone jockeyed for position, jockeyed to get an advantage that they couldn't gain at the negotiating table. So we can't forget that this deal blocked the bomb, blocked a war, and that we didn't just defeat the most feared lobbying machine in Washington, D.C., we defeated their worldview, a view that promised endless war, that said the way you win is that you change the other country's regime, that you knock them off one after the other, that you use your might to prevail in conflicts. We defeated that view, a view that had led us into disastrous wars over the last 15 years. We stopped it in its tracks. There is not going to be an Iran war. And in this agreement, we created a model for future agreements. Many of my colleagues are now writing articles, what the Iran deal can teach us about how to stop North Korea's bomb. Every situation is unique, but there are elements of this deal that can be applied, techniques in this deal. The very fact that you talked to each other, that you negotiated agreement, that you opened up negotiations without preconditions. Remember where we were 4 or 5 years ago? When everybody had preconditions, we're not going to enter into talks unless this, and that happens. One of the lessons of this successful negotiation is you can't have those kind of preconditions. You come to the table to negotiate conditions. You don't lay them down before you even walk in the room. Just 2 months ago in July, I was pleased to join a letter signed by 75 national security former officials and diplomats led by Lee Hamilton, applauding the anniversary of the successful negotiation of this deal, lauding it as a landmark security agreement, noting how much it has achieved and urging further steps. For example, the establishment of a permanent bilateral consultation between the U.S. and Iran. But even without that, this deal already has paid dividends. After the deal was negotiated, we negotiated very quickly the successful release of American prisoners who had been held there, a victory that our opponents seek to belittle with phony charges of ransom and payoff and secret deals. And of course, because of the channels that have been established, the relationships that have been established, when something unfortunate happened, the seizure of American sailors, it was resolved within 15 hours, not 15 weeks. And this kind of relationship is now a permanent part of the U.S.-Iran relationship. It's not codified. We don't have an intersection yet. The embassy still stands vacant here in Washington. But we have those kinds of discussions, of talks, and I have every reason to believe that when the Clinton administration takes office, that those channels will continue, because some of the same people who started the negotiations are going to be leading the national security team in the next administration. So that's another permanent part of change, another permanent change that this agreement has introduced. And I also believe that we have to constantly learn the lesson about how long it takes to achieve change. You know, we now take things in our life for granted, like women's suffrage, like the fact that you can't smoke in this hotel, that we have marriage equality across the land. You know, we take these things for granted, but it wasn't always this way. For years and years and years, you would go on an airplane flight and you'd have to fight, your lungs would be in a battle for survival over the smoking that would take place on the airline. And the idea that people could do that, it seems crazy, but it was only 25 years ago that people did that. So, but it takes a long time to achieve fundamental change, but once they are achieved, it seems normal, it seems natural. And that's what I believe is going to happen with the U.S.-Iran relationship. And we're seeing a change. Just this week, the U.S. gave initial approval to the sale for Boeing and Airbus of airplanes to Iran, a major breakthrough in business relationships with Iran, unleashing a powerful force. I mean, we did pretty good, but there's nothing like having global business on your side, pushing for change and the kind of conduits that opens up. And once people see that, yes, it's safe, I can go do that, I can trade this, more trade is likely to follow. Look at what's happening in Cuba after that relationship was unfrozen. Look what's happened. Look at the flow. Look how quickly this is developing. So I believe that this U.S.-Iran relationship is ripe for this kind of change. It didn't happen as quickly as we thought, but it is happening. The motion is clear. I believe the direction is irreversible, in part because we need each other. If we're going to stop the wars in Yemen and Syria, we need each other. If we're going to defeat ISIS, we need each other. If we're going to stop the drug trade that flows out of Afghanistan, that kills millions in the United States and in Iran, we need each other. If we're going to solve the water crises in the region that cause instability, we need each other. So I believe those strategic imperatives are going to push this country closer together. And as we do so, we have to keep in mind that this is a long battle. Nothing's quick. There is no magic victory for us. There's a series of victories. John F. Kennedy, in his inaugural address, his only inaugural address, spoke of the long twilight struggle. People remember that quote, and they think he was referring to the Cold War, which was indeed part of that struggle. But he wasn't. He meant something bigger, something broader. He specifically talked about the common enemies of man: tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. This is the struggle we are in. This is the struggle for peace that we're in, he said. And for us, this is our part of this struggle. This struggle for the future of Iran, for the future of the U.S.-Iran relationship. This is our piece of that struggle. This is where we put our shoulder to the wheel. This is where we make a difference. And when you think of it in those terms, you understand this, we're going to be in this for a long time. This is something that's going to go beyond our personal lives. We are just part of this larger effort. But everything we do matters. Every advance we make matters. It puts us another step. And every defense we make of this advance against the constant attacks, for example, by opponents of this deal who have already introduced 30 pieces of legislation trying to kill it, just 2 this week, that every time we defeat one of these, we are securing our victory, we are securing our future. And I have no doubt that we are going to prevail over this, just as we have prevailed over these previous societal changes, these societal advances that we've made over the generations. And from what I've seen of you in NIAC, I know you're more than up to the task. I am completely confident that working together, we are going to secure this deal. We're going to push it forward. We're going to change U.S. relations with Iran. We're going to change Iran. We're going to secure a more peaceful, more stable world for ourselves and for our children. I am proud to work with you on this noble cause. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now we come to the more interesting part. We have a few minutes, maybe 15 or 20 minutes for questions and discussion. If you have something to add, if you want to know who I think is going to win Ohio, I'm happy to tell you. How are we going to do this? Is there a mic or just talk from the floor? In the back.
Threat of war or starting a war in the Middle East. Would you care to comment on that as to how we can help in order to deviate the Saudis' plan and to get this thing done?
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. We don't want to make you stand the entire time.
I forgot we were having a moderating Q&A. Sorry.
You're doing us the service.
So let me answer that. There's an article in the Washington Post this morning that talks about the fact that 329 Yemeni civilians have been killed just in the last couple of months from Saudi bombing attacks. It's on page 12, maybe. It's way in the back. You know, you just don't see it. You just don't read about it. It is a nearly invisible war that's going on in Yemen. And it's a war that is being conducted by Saudi Arabia. Is Iran involved? Yes. But Iran isn't doing that bombing. Iran isn't killing those people. It is a testament to the Saudi public relations machine that it has. And you're right. We all talk about AIPAC. Saudi Arabia has got the invisible AIPAC. They don't have big, gaudy conventions. They don't send legions of people. Not a lot of Saudi Americans, I guess. Legions of people up to Capitol Hill to lobby. But they are there. They are felt. There is a chill in the think tank world, mainly because of Saudi money. It's hard to go to a university that doesn't have a lecture hall or an auditorium or a building that's not named after a Saudi or an Emirati. They are a big, big influence. But that, too, is changing. The other article in the paper today is how President Obama vetoed a bill that would allow Americans to sue for damages from the tragedy of 9/11, a tragedy that was caused in large part by Saudis who attacked us. Amazingly, it appears that the Congress is going to override that veto. That's quite a political landmark. That's quite a change. And one of the reasons we had so much opposition to the Iran deal wasn't just because Netanyahu had a different worldview in mind. It was because the Saudis feared a rebalancing of U.S. interests in the region. Well, guess what? That rebalancing is happening. You can see it. It's not dramatic, it's not sudden, but this appears to be the long-term trend. And I don't believe President Clinton can reverse that trend. I think this is the American security and business communities are moving in favor of this rebalance. When you read the interview by President Obama in The Atlantic and the way he sees the region, what he wanted to do and couldn't quite do enough, couldn't quite go quickly enough, there was hardly any protest about that view. I mean, that is now sort of the accepted view that, yes, we have interest there, but we have interest with lots of countries. We're not seeking to build an alliance against Iran or against any single country there. Yes, we'll be friends with Israel, but we also want to be friends with the other peoples of the world. Yes, we want to defend the Jewish homeland, but we also want to build a Palestinian homeland. I mean, I do believe that that is the course American policy is on.
Let me take the prerogative of being the one saying, no, we could have left you up there for hours. Is that what you want? We don't want to do that to you. And the reason we don't want to do that to you, Joe, is, and I don't know if a lot of you know this about Joe, but for football fans out there, Joe is like the quarterback. For basketball fans, Joe is like the point guard, right? So we have a good team, dozens of organizations working together to achieve all of the great things that you outlined when you were giving your remarks. And you're the point guard, you're the quarterback.
Thank you, Reza.
So as the point guard, as the quarterback, lay out what you think.
This was a setup.
This is not a setup, it's the truth. It's absolute truth. lay out for us what you think both the opportunities and the challenges are after President Obama leaves office and his successor comes in.
So first of all, I refuse to believe that a country that elected President Obama twice is going to elect a racist, sexist, xenophobic demagogue. I just don't believe that's going to happen. We're too good for that. I don't think that game is going to last. I don't even think it's going to be a long night, frankly. So I do believe that we're looking at a Clinton administration, that's the odds-on favorite to have it there. And in that, you have to understand, we haven't, I'm going to go out on a limb. Nobody in this room has ever seen what's about to happen. There has never been a democratic transition in your lifetime. You have to go back to Truman Roosevelt, the last time a democratic president was elected after an incumbent term had ended. It's happened to Republicans, obviously George H.W. Bush and Reagan, but it's hard to do. It's hard to get 12 years in the White House. And for Democrats, it's proved impossible until, I believe, next November. And so what that means is you're going to see a kind of continuity we're not used to. So a changeover, new people come in, old people go, but a lot of the people that have had their hands on the helm, I think, might be asked to stay, at least for a while. So, and a lot of the people who, particularly on the Iran deal, who were involved in the opening of the secret negotiations, there were some secrets here, like Jake Sullivan. Yep. Well, Jake Sullivan is the odds-on favorite to be Hillary Clinton's national security advisor. I don't know if that's going to happen. You know, the way the talk is cheap, and they've hardly ever proved to be correct, these kinds of predictions. But Jake is clearly the main national security advisor to the campaign on this. And the team of people that Hillary's assembled around her are all people who were involved in the deal, like Robert Einhorn, for example. Wendy Sherman, who negotiated the deal, Richard Nephew, and all of these people are likely, even though they deny it, are likely to play a prominent role in the administration. So you'll see that continuity. And so therefore, all of them, you're going to see strong defenders of the deal coming in. What you'll also see, however, is a little bit more of a hard line. And this should give you a little pause for concern. I was at the Brookings Institution when candidate Clinton made her speech on Iran, and where she embraced the deal, but then said quite explicitly, this is not the beginning of more diplomacy with Iran. She took a harder line. She then talked about containment. So she's willing to engage Iran on this nuclear deal, but seeks a policy of containment otherwise. Whereas President Obama, speaking just last year, a few weeks later, in September at the UN, talked about containing Iran's adventurism, but primarily engaging with Iran. It was a difference of emphasis. And so part of our job is going to have to be to prove to the new Clinton administration that engagement is more effective, that you can get the security gains you seek by engaging, not by needlessly challenging, by needlessly provoking. Iran's is never going to be our BFF. I mean, not in the near future. We're always going to have differences, but the way we deal with those differences, I think, is more like we did with the Iran deal and not like what some people in the Clinton campaign have in mind.
Sure.
Did that help?
Absolutely. Let's go back to the crowd and open it up. I don't know who has the microphone. I can't see because there's a light shining right in my face. So whoever has the microphone is going to have to. Oh, over here. Yeah, please.
So, Joe, you've talked a lot about what U.S.-Iran relations are going to look like under a Hillary administration. If Trump wins the election,
I just told you that's not going to happen.
But if it does,
okay, yeah.
Let's play out the hypothetical, please.
Okay.
Just humor me for this. If Trump were to somehow win, even though you said that's impossible, what can we as a community do to safeguard our freedoms and what we have accomplished under the Obama administration?
Okay, so I'm going to go off the reservation a little bit here. I was just in San Francisco for a few days and meeting with the staff there. Our foundation is based in San Francisco. It's one of the perks of the job that I have to go to San Francisco every couple of months. It's beautiful, by the way. And we talked about this. I was talking with some donors about this. And I don't, maybe you do, but I don't know anybody who has a plan B. I don't know anybody who's planning for a Trump administration. In large part, and it's not just because it's unlikely, you know, if the guy's got a 40% shot, I check 538 too. You know, if he's got a 40% shot, which he does this morning, you know, you should develop a plan. The problem is you don't know what to plan for. You have no idea what this would be, who it would be. I just reeled off, you know, a half dozen senior officials in the future Clinton administration. I can't name one. This General Flynn, does he matter? Or is he another discardable advisor like all the rest have been? We have no idea. Does Mike Pence matter? Is Trump even going to move into the White House? You know, it's very, very difficult to plan. And I would think if we're, you might see people shift. If Monday night is awful, if the debates go really well, if Hillary continues to perform poorly, maybe 3 weeks from now, you know, there'll be more effort to plan. But I don't see what you got to do if you're there is, number one, you're going to have to build a bulwark against an out-of-control president. You are going to have to take it. You have to build on the advantages that what people have said in the Congress already about their concerns about this, and organize with those people to make sure that we can block and veto the most dangerous moves that President Trump would make. Two, you've got to take the lessons that we had from the Sanders campaign and institutionalize it. You're going to have to build a mass movement, because you're not going to be able to count on the Congress to do this. You're going to have to take this kind of energy you saw 8 years ago with Obama, or a few months ago with Sanders, and you're going to have to mobilize that into a real citizens movement that can stop the worst of what Trump's going to be able to do. And three, I think you're going to have to reach out to the business community, who are scared to death about what a President Trump could do. And four, you're going to have a big base of support in the national security establishment for, we'll have to call it something, you know, Protect Democracy Coalition, like that. Because I do believe there are fascist-like elements in the Trump campaign. I wouldn't call him a fascist, certainly not in the classic sense, but it's there. It's there. And consolidated in power, it can move quickly, so we're going to have to too. So it will be a whole new ball game if Trump actually becomes president. And I would expect, for example, that what I do would change dramatically. I'm still going to be working on nuclear weapons, but I would think that this would be a cause that would supersede the kinds of issues I'm currently engaged in.
Absolutely. By the way, I've actually looked into the whole go to Canada thing. It's not easy at all. So if that's all your guys' plan B, you need to go back to the drawing board, because that's not happening unless you already have the dual citizenship. Who's next? Please.
It sometimes takes a half second to kick in.
Hello. All right, there we
you
go.
go.
Hi, I'm Shiva. I'm from Sacramento, California. My question is...
I didn't mean to dish Sacramento. I'm sure
No.
it's beautiful there.
No, it's the capital. People forget. It's the capital of California. My question is, you mentioned diplomacy and the Iranian embassy being empty. And there hasn't been an Iranian embassy in the States or an American embassy in Iran since the 80s. And I was wondering how far, because given the climate, I didn't think I would see it in my lifetime, an embassy opened, but I feel like recently there is hope. So how far out do you think we are, or what has to be done for there to be restored diplomatic relations and an American embassy in Iran and an Iranian embassy in the States?
Well, you're going to have people at this conference that are far more experienced than I am on this. In fact, you might want to answer this question, but let me give you my guess. First, you're going to have to see an intersection, right? This will proceed in stages. Even during the negotiations, there was some talk that the negotiators were discussing an interest section. You may know. I never saw any evidence of that, but I heard rumors, maybe from you.
It's true.
Go ahead, tell me more.
It's absolutely true. Look, I can tell you on our end, on the American end, in the Bush administration when I was at the State Department, we walked this up the molehill, and it died at the White House. And then in the beginning of the Obama administration when I was at the State Department, we walked this up the molehill, and it died at the White House. And the reason why is because there was a perpetual fear that the lines outside of a potential intersection would be so long, and the rejection rate of visas would be in the 90th percentile, that American soft power, gone like that. That was the reason why. Like, yes, the security concerns, et cetera, but there's security concerns all over the region.
Yes.
That was the impetus.
Yeah.
Now, lest we forget, there's also challenges on the Iranian end. Within the Iranian political system, this idea of reconciling the fact that you took Americans hostage for 444 days, and you haven't come to grips with that, and the apology has not been issued, and the wrongs have not been made right, that has to happen on the Iranian end.
Right. So, for example, President Rouhani was in New York this week.
That's right.
This week. A very brief stay. And, you know, we still didn't get the handshake that we all expected maybe 3 years ago. We still didn't get that handshake. And the reason is it's political risky for President Rouhani to do it.
That's right.
So that's President Obama was ready then, and he was ready now to do this, but it's the Iranian side. So there's deep political barriers to doing something like this. But here's the thing to watch. Watch the business world. If we just have a major American corporation that's concluded a $17 billion deal with Iran and is now going to start moving these parts, moving these planes, they're going to have their own intersection. They're going to have to be Boeing people on the ground in Iran. Well, that's interesting.
Is it?
How many? Dozens? 100? I mean, this is a big deal.
That's right.
As Vice President Biden might say. It's a big freaking deal. So watch that. Watch what happens there and how that starts to normalize this kind of flow and this kind of discussion and this kind of relationship. And the diplomats might follow the business people.
I agree 100%. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Who's got the microphone?
Joe, thank you for being here. I wanted to go back to the remarks that you made earlier with regard to Hillary Clinton. Historically, her instincts have been quite hawkish, whether when it came to Libya and later on her approach to Syria. I understand Jake Sullivan and Whitney Sherman, of course, have been part of the negotiation, but she has stated policy of essentially no-fly zone in Syria that could potentially create next set of challenges. I'm not suggesting it's a bad policy or a good policy, but the question is that there is no question that she also has made some very pro-Saudi statements publicly, as well as, of course, historically been extremely pro-Israel. So the question is, how are you so assured that her instinct's not going to take over and essentially be dominated by a hawkish view in the Middle East?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's more of a prediction, but I'm not sure. And purely in my personal capacity, I was an advisor to the Bernie Sanders campaign. Nothing to do with my business relationship. Thank you. And the reason was my concern over Hillary Clinton's national security policies. And I thought that Bernie had a better view, and one of the great tragedies, in my view, of his campaign is that he didn't say it more, that he didn't engage on this in a more full-throated way. There was a lot there, and you saw some of it fought out on in the Democratic Party platform, which was a better platform on national security because of the Sanders campaign, I think. So you're gonna have these tendencies, and it's been true of both Clintons, frankly. You know, remember it was President Bill Clinton that launched cruise missile strikes against Saddam Hussein. You know, there's been a tendency of both Clintons to sort of take they're mostly concerned about domestic issues, so they take the national security, particularly defense budget issues, and sort of triangulate on that, and you know, demonstrate their conservative credentials in that area. But it's also, in the case of Hillary's case, I think this is what she believes. She's not just appealing to a certain sector of the Democratic donor community. I think this is what she genuinely believes. This is the way she sees it. What gives me some optimism about this is I think the national security establishment has moved beyond that. I mean, this has not been a good 15 years for the military. We have been bogged down in these loser wars, despite the bravery of all the people who fought. I mean, this has been a tremendous drain. The Army's been chewed up. You do not have a military that's chomping at the bit for more interventions. When you have these discussions, as we all do in Washington, in dinner circles or friendship groups, yes, there are people who want to go into Syria and hit hard, but they're in a minority. They really are. And a lot of it is talk, a lot of it is posture. So I think the experiences of the last 15 years, that tide is moving in the other direction from interventionism. I still do fear that there will be interventionist-type mistakes made. I'm hopeful that they can be containable, that they can be small mistakes, and we will not see the repeat of another Iraq invasion or another massive military attempted solution like we tried to do in Afghanistan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do we have time for one more? I'm going to ask you because you're the...
Yeah, sure.
You're the head one. No, I mean, you're the quarterback, but this is actually the person I have to listen to.
Oh, sorry.
So we got to keep it moving. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving the quarterback, Joe, a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.